Part 1. The Dinner. I had been looking forward to that Father's Day for weeks. At 68, you stop caring about gifts. You don't need watches, ties, or gadgets. All you really want is your family around the same table. Noise. Laughter. Someone arguing about politics. Someone asking for more potatoes. My son Daniel insisted on hosting. Dad, you've done enough your whole life. This year, you relax. My treat. I remember smiling when he said that, because Daniel had never been the responsible one growing up. He was always big dreams, big ideas, big risks. I was the opposite. 42 years working as an electrician, waking up at 5 a.m., saving every spare dollar, every overtime shift, every missed vacation, every repaired neighbor's wiring for a few extra bucks, all for one reason: so my son would never struggle the way I did. After his mother passed, it became just the two of us. I paid his college tuition. I helped him start a small business that failed. Then another. And I never complained. Because he was my boy. 3 years ago, I sold my workshop and put my retirement savings into the bank. $240,000. My entire life in numbers on a screen. I was proud of it. I told Daniel about it one evening. He leaned forward immediately. Dad, you can't just leave that in the bank. Inflation eats it alive. I didn't even understand the word inflation fully, but I trusted him. He showed me charts, graphs, glowing green lines climbing up, Bitcoin, Ethereum, words I had never heard before. This isn't gambling, he said. This is the future. I hesitated. I worked 40 years for that money, son. I know, he said softly. That's why I'll manage it carefully. I won't risk all of it. I promise. And I believed him. Because fathers don't just trust their sons. They want to. So I allowed him to invest a portion. Then a little more. Then eventually, he was handling most of it. He kept reassuring me. Relax, Dad. You're going to retire comfortably. 4 months, he gave updates. We are up. Market dipped but recovering. Big opportunity coming. I stopped checking the account myself. I didn't want to look foolish asking questions I couldn't understand. I simply trusted. Father's Day arrived warm and bright. Daniel's house smelled like grilled meat and garlic bread. My granddaughter Lily ran into my arms the moment I stepped inside. Grandpa. That alone made the day worth it. My daughter-in-law Karen greeted me politely, a little too politely. She always treated me like a guest instead of family. I noticed, but I never said anything. Peace matters more than pride when you're old. Dinner began. Plates clinked. Everyone laughed. For a moment, I felt rich. Not because of money, because I still had a family. Halfway through dinner, Daniel went quiet. Very quiet. He wasn't eating. He wasn't laughing. He kept staring at his hands under the table. I noticed his legs shaking. Everything all right? I asked. Karen looked at him sharply. He swallowed. Dad, there's something I need to tell you. The room slowly fell silent. I felt a strange heaviness settle in my chest. He didn't look at me when he spoke. The crypto market crashed. I nodded slowly. That happens, right? You said it goes up and down. He finally looked at me. His eyes were red. Dad, I didn't just invest some of it. My heart started beating faster. How much? I asked quietly. He whispered. I lost $180,000. The fork slipped from my hand and hit the plate. The entire table froze. And in that moment, Father's Day dinner turned into something else entirely. To be continued in Part 2. What Daniel confessed next made the situation far worse than just the money. Part 2. The truth behind the loss. For a few seconds, no one moved. I could hear the ticking of the wall clock in Daniel's dining room, louder than any conversation. Lily looked around confused, sensing something was wrong but not understanding what. I didn't shout. I didn't stand up. I just asked one question. How? Daniel rubbed his face with both hands. His shoulders shook. I had seen him cry only twice in his life, once when he was 8 and broke his arm, and once at his mother's funeral. This was different. This wasn't just a market crash, Dad. Karen finally spoke, and her voice was sharp. Daniel, just tell him. He swallowed hard. I started trading. Not investing. Trading. I didn't understand the difference. What does that mean? I asked. It means, Karen said coldly, he was gambling. Daniel shook his head quickly. It wasn't like that. I thought I could recover losses. The price dropped and I panicked. I borrowed against the account. Then I used leverage. Then futures trading. The words meant nothing to me, but one sentence did. I tried to win it back. My stomach turned cold. How much of my money is left? I asked quietly. Daniel looked down at the table. About 60,000. I felt something inside me go silent. Not anger. Not shock. Something deeper, the realization that 42 years of work had been reduced to a number, smaller than the cost of a small house. I pictured my younger self climbing ladders in winter storms, fixing electrical panels in attics in summer heat, working double shifts while my wife slept alone, missing birthdays because overtime paid better. All of it. Gone. Lily tugged my sleeve. Grandpa, why are you sad? I forced a smile. I'm okay, sweetheart. But Daniel wasn't finished. Dad, there's more. My chest tightened. The platform. I owe money. Karen slammed her hand on the table. Tell him the amount. Daniel whispered. 200,000. The air left my lungs. You mean debt? I asked. He nodded slowly. They're calling every day. Margin calls. If I don't pay, they'll sue. They could take the house. Karen stood up. We are already behind on payments. The bank warned us yesterday. Everything suddenly made sense. The nervousness, the forced Father's Day invitation, the overly polite behavior. This dinner wasn't a celebration. It was a confession. Daniel leaned toward me desperately. Dad, I need help. I looked at him. Really looked at him. He wasn't a child anymore. He was a grown man who had risked not only his own life, but mine. I thought I could make you rich, he said. I wanted to surprise you. I finally spoke. You didn't lose my money trying to help me. My voice was calm, but heavy. You lost it because you couldn't stop. Karen quietly added. They said if we can't pay soon, they may come after family assets too. I frowned. What family assets? She hesitated. Daniel answered. They asked if you own property, or savings, or anything else. For the first time that night, I felt fear, not for the money already gone, but for what they were expecting next. Daniel leaned forward. Dad, I need you to cover the debt. Just temporarily. I swear I'll repay you. The room felt smaller. I realized something important in that moment. I hadn't just lost my retirement. I was about to be asked to sacrifice the last piece of security I had left. And I had to decide, right there at that table, whether helping my son again would save him, or finally destroy both of us. In part 3, I give Daniel my answer, and what happened next shocked the entire family. Part 3. The decision. No one spoke for a long time after Daniel asked, "Dad, please," he whispered. I stared at the glass of water in front of me. My reflection trembled on the surface. 42 years of work. Every weekend I didn't rest. Every holiday I worked overtime so Daniel could go to college. So he'd never live the life I did. And now he was asking for more. Not a little more. Everything. Karen crossed her arms. "We don't have time to think about it." They called again this morning. "If we can't pay within 2 weeks, legal action starts." Daniel nodded quickly. "I'll sign anything, Dad. A contract. I'll give you the house, my car, whatever you want. I just need you to help me get past this." I finally looked up at him. "You didn't come here to tell me," I said quietly. "You came here to ask me to fix it." His eyes filled with tears. "You're my father. I didn't know who else to go to." That sentence hurt more than the money, because I suddenly realized something. He wasn't coming to me for advice. He was coming because his whole life, I had always saved him. When he failed a class, I paid for tutoring. When he crashed his first car, I paid the repairs. When he couldn't afford rent, I let him move back home. And somewhere along the way, he stopped fearing consequences. I folded my hands on the table. "Daniel," I said calmly, "do you know why people become careful with money?" He shook his head. "Because they once lost their own." Karen frowned. "What does that mean?" "It means," I continued, "this is the first time you're facing the real cost of a decision." Daniel's face went pale. "You're saying no." Lily looked between us nervously. I leaned forward. "I'm saying I won't pay your debt." The silence was instant and heavy. Karen stood up sharply. "You can't be serious. He's your son." "I know exactly who he is," I replied. Daniel's voice cracked. "They'll take everything from me." I nodded slowly. "And if I pay it, they'll take everything from me instead." He looked stunned, like he had never considered that possibility. I continued. "I worked my entire life so you would have opportunities, not so you could gamble them away." Tears ran down his face now. "I made a mistake." "Yes," I said gently, "and now you must learn from it." Karen shook her head angrily. "You're abandoning him." "No," I replied calmly. "I'm letting him grow up." Daniel pushed his chair back and stood. "I thought you loved me." That one almost broke me, but I answered anyway. "I do. That's why I won't protect you from the consequences anymore." He stared at me like he didn't recognize me. Then something changed in his expression. Not anger. Not sadness. Fear. "Dad," he said slowly, "if they come after us, they might come after you too." I paused. "What do you mean?" Daniel hesitated. "The trading account. I used your name as a financial reference." My heart skipped. "You what?" Karen looked shocked. "You never told me that." Daniel's voice trembled. "They have your information, your address, your assets." The room suddenly felt cold. This wasn't just his problem anymore. It was coming for me too. And at that moment, I realized the nightmare wasn't beginning for Daniel. It was beginning for me. In part 4, someone shows up at my house, and I discover how serious Daniel's mistake really is. Part 4, the knock at the door. The next morning, I woke up earlier than usual. I hadn't really slept. Daniel's last words kept repeating in my head. "They have your address, your assets." I told myself he was exaggerating. Maybe just collectors calling, maybe threatening letters. I'd dealt with banks before. I understood paperwork, negotiations, payment plans. But at 8:12 a.m., someone knocked on my front door. Not a normal knock. 3 slow, heavy knocks. I froze in the kitchen, coffee still in my hand. Another knock followed, louder this time. My stomach tightened. I walked to the window beside the door and slightly moved the curtain. 2 men stood outside. Dark suits. No smiles. No phones in their hands. Just waiting. And suddenly, I understood this was not a bank. I opened the door halfway. Yes. The taller man spoke calmly. Mr. Robert Hayes. Yes. He pulled a small card from his pocket and showed it quickly. Too quickly for me to read fully. We need to speak with you regarding Daniel Hayes. My chest tightened. I already told him I can't pay his debt. The second man shook his head slightly. This isn't about paying yet. It's about responsibility. I tried to remain steady. I didn't sign anything. The taller man looked directly into my eyes. No, but your name was listed as financial backing. In situations like this, that makes you involved. Involved in what exactly? He paused. Fraudulent leverage trading with private capital. The words meant only one thing. Daniel hadn't borrowed money from a company. He borrowed from people. Dangerous people. My hands felt cold. I didn't authorize anything. We understand, the man said calmly. That's why we are here politely first. Politely. The word sent a chill down my spine. What do you want? The shorter man finally spoke. Daniel owes $180,000. Interest is growing daily. We prefer families to resolve these matters internally. I told you, I don't have that kind of liquid money. The taller man looked past me into the house, noticing the furniture, the hallway, the framed photos. You have a house. My heart dropped. This house is paid off, I said firmly. He nodded. Yes, exactly. The message was clear. They weren't asking me to help Daniel. They were preparing to take everything. I swallowed hard. I need time. The 2 men looked at each other. Then the taller one reached into his coat and placed an envelope into my hand. 3 days. My fingers trembled as I held it. What happens after 3 days? He gave a small, emotionless smile. We stopped being polite. They turned and walked away calmly, as if they had simply delivered a package. I closed the door slowly and locked it, then locked it again. I opened the envelope. Inside was a printed document and a photo of Daniel leaving my house last night, taken from across the street. I felt the blood drain from my face. They weren't guessing. They were watching. And suddenly I realized something terrifying. This wasn't just about money anymore. I picked up my phone and dialed Daniel. He answered instantly. Dad. My voice shook for the first time in years. Daniel, what exactly did you get yourself into? There was silence. Then he whispered. They told you already, didn't they? I sat down slowly, because now I understood. We weren't dealing with debt collectors. We were dealing with men who don't wait for courtrooms. And I only had 3 days. In part 5, I make a decision I never thought I would. And I go to someone from my past I swore I'd never contact again. Part 5, an old favor. I didn't call the police. Not because I didn't want to. Because I didn't think it would help. Men who take photos outside your home and give deadlines don't scare easily. And I had a feeling if I handled this the wrong way, Daniel would be the one who paid first. I sat at my kitchen table staring at the envelope for almost an hour. Then I walked to the hallway closet. At the very back, behind winter coats and an old toolbox, was a metal lockbox I hadn't opened in years. Inside were papers, my wife Margaret's letters, and an old business card. I hadn't touched it in almost 25 years. I held it in my hand for a long time before dialing the number. It rang twice. A deep voice answered. Hello. I almost hung up, but I didn't. Frank, it's Robert Hayes. Silence. Then a slow exhale. Well, he said, I wondered if I'd ever hear from you again. Frank DeLuca and I had worked together in my 20s. I was an electrician on construction sites. He was security for a contracting company, but everyone knew he had connections. Not criminal exactly, but he knew people who knew people. Years ago, I helped him. A wiring job after hours. No permits. Nothing illegal, but quiet. He never forgot it. I wouldn't call unless I had no other choice, I said. That bad? Yes. I explained everything. Daniel. The trading. The debt. The men at my door. Frank didn't interrupt once. When I finished, he spoke calmly. You're not dealing with a bank, he said. You're dealing with private lenders. They finance high-risk traders. When money disappears, they collect personally. I figured that much. You can't negotiate with them alone. I rubbed my forehead. They gave me 3 days. Frank was quiet for a moment. Do you still live at the same address? Yes. Then listen carefully, he said. Don't sell your house. Don't transfer money yet. And whatever you do, don't run. Why? Because they already expect fear. Running makes you a target. I hesitated. Can you help me? Another pause. Then he said, I can talk to someone. Someone. A man who mediates situations like this. If they respect him, they'll sit down instead of escalate. I exhaled slowly for the first time since morning. When? Tonight, he said. But Robert, you need to understand something. What? If Daniel lied to you about anything at all, the situation could be much worse than money. My chest tightened. What do you mean? Frank's voice dropped. Private lenders don't just fund trading accounts. Sometimes they fund illegal leverage pools. And if Daniel touched that money... He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't have to. Because I finally realized Daniel might not just owe them cash. He might have lost their investment capital. And if that was true, 3 days wasn't a deadline. It was a warning. That evening, Frank picked me up. We drove to a quiet restaurant on the edge of town. Not fancy. Not crowded. Inside, one man sat alone at a table in the back. He didn't look threatening. Older than me. Grey suit. Calm eyes. But when Frank greeted him, respectfully, I understood. This man mattered. Robert, Frank said softly, this is Mr. Varga. The man nodded politely. Sit, he said. I did. He folded his hands. I've heard about your son. My throat tightened. Can you help him? He studied me carefully. First, you must answer honestly. I nodded. He leaned forward slightly. Did your son only lose money? Or did he take money that wasn't his to trade? My heart started pounding. Because suddenly, I wasn't sure I knew the answer. In part 6, Daniel finally tells me the full truth. And it's far worse than losing $180,000. Part 6, the real amount. I didn't answer Mr. Varga right away. Because the truth was, I didn't know. I looked at Frank. He gave a small nod. Call your son, Mr. Varga said calmly. Put him on speaker. My hands felt heavy as I pulled out my phone. Daniel answered after the second ring. Dad, are you okay? I took a breath. Daniel, I need you to tell me the truth. Everything. No protecting me. No protecting yourself. Silence. Then he said quietly, Why? You're on speaker, I replied. And I'm sitting with someone who can help. But only if you stop lying. I heard his breathing change. What do you mean lying? I already told you. I cut him off. Did you only lose my money? The silence stretched longer this time. Then came 3 words that changed everything. No. My heart dropped. How much, Daniel? His voice was barely a whisper. I wasn't trading just your account. I joined a private leverage group. They pulled capital. I used your funds as collateral to access a larger trading position. I felt dizzy. How large? He didn't answer immediately. Daniel. $750,000. The restaurant felt like it disappeared around me. I grabbed the edge of the table. You lost $750,000. Yes, he said weakly. Most of it wasn't yours. But I signed the contracts. And when it collapsed, I became responsible. Mr. Varga didn't react. He just listened. I spoke slowly. And they believe I'm backing you. Yes, Daniel said. Because I listed you as financial guarantor. I thought I'd win and remove it before you ever knew. I closed my eyes. You used my name. I never thought I'd lose this badly. Mr. Varga finally spoke. Daniel, he said calmly, do you understand whose money that was? Daniel hesitated. Investors. No, Mr. Varga replied quietly. Private capital. The kind that doesn't go through courts first. I heard Daniel inhale sharply on the phone. What does that mean? It means, Varga said, you are not dealing with a company. You are dealing with individuals who consider unpaid debt a personal offense. Daniel's voice trembled. Are they going to hurt my father? I finally spoke again. They already came to my house. A long silence. Then Daniel said something I didn't expect. Dad, this is my fault. I'll go to them. I'll tell them you had nothing to do with it. Mr. Varga shook his head slowly. That would make it worse. Why? Because now they believe your father has assets. If you remove him, they lose security. Desperate debtors become disposable. My chest tightened. So what happens now? I asked. Mr. Varga leaned back. There is only one solution left. I swallowed. What? He looked directly at me. They will agree to negotiate, but they won't negotiate with your son. My hands tightened on the table. They'll negotiate with you. I felt cold. I don't owe them anything. No, he said calmly, but you own something they want. My mind went instantly to the house. My home. He nodded once. Right now, they think you're a guarantor. If they push legally, it becomes complicated and public. They prefer simple resolutions. And a simple resolution is, I asked, you take responsibility for the debt and offer collateral. The words hit harder than any threat. You mean, they want my house. Mr. Varga didn't soften it. Yes. I sat frozen. 42 years of work. Margaret's memories. My only real security. All because my son believed he could beat numbers on a screen. The phone was still silent. Then Daniel spoke, crying openly. No. Dad, don't do it. I'll turn myself in. I'll declare bankruptcy. Mr. Varga interrupted gently. Bankruptcy stops banks. It does not stop men who funded private leverage. I stared at the table. I finally understood. This wasn't about recovering money. This was about survival. And I had a decision no parent ever wants. Keep my home. Or protect my son. I whispered. How long do I have to decide? Mr. Varga answered quietly. 24 hours. In part 7, I make my choice. But Daniel does something that changes everything before the meeting even begins. Part 7, the The choice. I didn't sleep that night. I walked through every room of my house in the dark, the living room where Margaret used to knit in the evenings, the hallway where Daniel once measured his height against the wall, the garage where I spent weekends fixing things just to keep busy after she passed. Every corner held a memory, and now every memory had a price. By morning, I had made my decision. I called Frank. "I'll do it," I said. He didn't ask what I meant. "I understand," he replied quietly. "I'll arrange the meeting." I hung up and sat at the kitchen table, the same table where Daniel learned to write his name, the same place I told him his mother was gone. I picked up my phone and called him. He answered instantly. "Dad." "I'm going to meet them tonight," I said calmly. "No," he said immediately. "Don't. I'm coming with you." "You're not." "This is my fault." "Yes," I replied, "and my responsibility." His voice broke. "I can't let you lose everything because of me." I closed my eyes. A parent doesn't measure life by property, Daniel. I measure it by whether my son lives long enough to regret his mistakes. Silence. Then he whispered, "I don't deserve you." I didn't answer, because right then, I wasn't sure forgiveness was the same as love. That evening, Frank picked me up again. We drove to a small office building on the outskirts of the city. No sign, no business name, just a single lit window on the second floor. Inside were 3 men, including the 2 who had come to my house. They recognized me immediately. The taller one nodded slightly. "You came?" "Yes." We sat across from each other at a long table. Mr. Varga was already there. He spoke first. "Mr. Hayes is prepared to resolve the matter." The man across from me slid a folder forward. Inside were papers. Legal transfer of property title, my house, in exchange for the debt being cleared. No interest. No further contact. A clean end. My hands rested on the paper. 42 years. 1 signature. I picked up the pen, and then the door opened behind me. "Stop!" Daniel's voice echoed across the room. I turned. He stood there breathing hard, holding a folder of his own. "Dad, don't sign it." The men stood up instantly, tension filling the room. "You shouldn't be here," one of them said. Daniel walked forward anyway and placed his folder on the table. I brought something better than his house. I frowned. "What did you do?" His eyes were red but steady. "I turned myself in this afternoon." My heart dropped. "You what?" I reported everything, the leverage group, the trading platform, the contracts. Financial Crimes Division is already investigating. The room went completely silent. One of the men's expressions changed for the first time. "You involved authorities?" He said coldly. Daniel nodded. "Yes." And I signed a sworn statement that my father had no knowledge and no involvement. He looked at me. "You don't have to lose your home because of me." I felt anger rise. "You could get prison time." He swallowed. "I know." The tension in the room was suffocating. Then Mr. Varga finally spoke. "You forced a new situation." The men looked at each other. They weren't afraid, but they were calculating now. Legal attention changed everything. The taller man slowly closed the folder with the house documents. "This matter is no longer simple," he said. He looked directly at Daniel. "You've complicated it." Daniel stood straight. It was always my debt. For the first time since this began, the pressure shifted away from me. But I suddenly understood something terrifying. Daniel had saved my house, and possibly sacrificed his freedom. I looked at him. "Why would you do this?" His answer came without hesitation. "Because for the first time in my life, I wanted to be the one protecting you." In Part 8, the consequences arrive, and I learn whether Daniel's decision truly saved us or made things worse. Part 8, Consequences. No one spoke for several seconds after Daniel's confession. The room had changed. Before, the men saw me as leverage. Now, they saw risk. The taller man leaned back slowly in his chair, studying Daniel. "You went to authorities," he said. Not angry. Not loud. Just certain. Daniel nodded. "Yes." "Names?" Daniel hesitated for a fraction of a second. "Yes." My stomach tightened. One of the other men muttered under his breath. The calm atmosphere was gone, replaced by calculation. Mr. Varga finally stood up. "The situation has shifted," he said evenly. "There is no advantage in continuing pressure. This will now become a legal matter." The tall man looked at him carefully. "And what about our losses?" Varga answered without emotion. "You entered an unregulated market. You accepted the risk. Pursuing this family further will only bring attention you do not want." The man stared at Daniel for a long moment. Then he looked at me. "You raised a foolish son," he said quietly, "but a brave one." He pushed the house documents back toward me. "We are finished here." Just like that. No shouting. No threats. But as they stood to leave, he paused beside Daniel. "You chose law over fear. Pray the law protects you." Then they walked out. My legs nearly gave out once the door closed. I grabbed Daniel's shoulder. "You could go to prison," I said. He nodded slowly. "I know." Frank exhaled for what felt like the first time all night. Mr. Varga turned to Daniel. "You did the only thing that actually gave you a chance," he said. "Fraud investigations prefer cooperation. You reported first. That matters." Daniel looked exhausted. "I don't care about me," he said quietly. "I just didn't want him to lose everything." I didn't realize I was shaking until my hands started trembling. For days I had prepared to give up my home. Instead, my son had risked his future to save it. 2 weeks later, the investigation began officially. Daniel wasn't arrested. He was interviewed. Again and again. He provided emails, trading records, messages from the leverage group, and transaction logs. The platform itself was already under scrutiny. Apparently dozens of young traders had been recruited, with promises of fast profits using borrowed capital. Daniel had been one of the smaller cases, but he was the first to come forward voluntarily. The prosecutor finally explained it clearly. "You didn't run a scam. You were reckless. You misrepresented your guarantor. And you signed contracts you didn't understand. But you cooperated immediately and exposed a larger illegal financial operation." Daniel asked the question neither of us wanted to say out loud. "Am I going to prison?" The prosecutor shook his head. "No, but there will be consequences." He received financial penalties, a civil judgment, and mandatory financial responsibility courses. His trading accounts were permanently banned. No jail. When we walked out of the courthouse, Daniel just stood on the steps staring at the sky. "I thought my life was over," he whispered. I looked at him. "It was," I said softly. "The one you were living." He frowned slightly. I placed a hand on his shoulder. "Now you get to build a real one." For the first time since Father's Day dinner, he smiled. That evening, we sat at my kitchen table again. Same table. Very different silence. Daniel finally spoke. "I chased fast money because I thought success meant proving something. To you, to everyone." I shook my head. "You never needed to prove anything to me." He swallowed. "I know now." He pulled an envelope from his jacket and slid it toward me. "What's this?" "My first paycheck." I blinked. "You got a job." "Hardware store," he said quietly. Nothing special. I opened the envelope. It wasn't a lot, but I understood immediately what it meant. I'm going to pay every dollar back, he said, even if it takes 10 years. I didn't say anything for a moment. Then I pushed the envelope back toward him. I don't want repayment. He looked confused. I want responsibility. He nodded slowly, and for the first time, I believed he understood the difference. In Part 9, months later, a final surprise arrives that proves this disaster changed more than just Daniel's future. Part 9, the surprise. 6 months passed. Life didn't magically become easy, but it became honest. Daniel worked every day. Early mornings stocking shelves, late evenings unloading delivery trucks. His hands were rough again, not from typing trades on a screen, but from lifting boxes and fixing things for customers who didn't know or care about crypto markets. And strangely, he seemed calmer. No more charts. No more late-night panic. No more checking prices every 5 minutes. Just work. Every Friday he came to my house for dinner. Not out of guilt anymore, out of routine. One evening he showed up carrying groceries. I brought steak, he said. I raised an eyebrow. On a hardware store salary. He smiled slightly. Manager discount. We cooked together like we hadn't since he was a teenager. The silence between us wasn't uncomfortable anymore. It was peaceful. After dinner, he handed me a small envelope. I sighed. Daniel. Just open it. Inside was a cashier's check. $2,000. I stared at it. You don't need to rush this. I'm not rushing, he said. I'm rebuilding. I shook my head. Keep your money. Save it. He didn't argue, just smiled. I already did. Then he said something that surprised me. I stopped thinking about becoming rich. I looked at him. Good. I started thinking about becoming reliable. Those words hit harder than anything he'd said before. A week later, someone knocked on my door in the afternoon. I wasn't expecting anyone. When I opened it, a woman stood there holding a folder. Mr. Hayes. Yes. I'm from the Financial Crimes Investigation Unit. I believe you know about your son's case. My chest tightened instantly. Yes. Is Daniel okay? She smiled slightly. He's fine. Actually, we came because of him. I let her in. She sat at the kitchen table and opened the folder. Your son's cooperation helped us dismantle an illegal lending network operating through multiple trading platforms. Several organizers have now been charged. I didn't fully understand. So, it's over. Almost. There's one more thing. She slid a paper across the table. It wasn't a bill. It wasn't a notice. It was a restitution document. Assets seized during the investigation are being redistributed to victims who suffered financial harm connected to the case. My hands trembled slightly. What does that mean? She pointed to the number. A payment amount. I read it twice to be sure. $112,400. I stared at her. You're telling me some of the money is coming back? Yes, she said. Your son wasn't the only victim, but because he came forward first and documented everything, it allowed recovery efforts to begin sooner. I sat down slowly. For months I had accepted it was all gone. And now, not everything was lost. Daniel came over that evening as usual. I didn't say anything until after dinner. Then I handed him the letter. He read it. And for the first time since this started, his eyes filled with tears. I don't deserve this, he whispered. I shook my head. It's not a reward, I said gently. He looked up. It's a second chance. In Part 10, Father's Day returns 1 year later, but this time, the dinner ends very differently. Part 10, 1 year later, final. A year passed. Father's Day came again. For a long time, I thought I'd dread this day forever, that it would always remind me of the moment my life nearly collapsed at my own dinner table. But this time, the house was full before I even woke up. I heard voices in the kitchen, pans clinking, someone laughing. I walked down the hallway and stopped. Daniel stood at the stove flipping pancakes. Burning them, actually. "Those are charcoal," I said. He turned and grinned. "Tradition." I hadn't seen that smile in years. On the table were eggs, toast, coffee, and a small wrapped box sitting in front of my chair. "You didn't have to do this," I said. "I know," he replied. "I wanted to." We sat down together. No tension, no silence, no fear of a confession waiting to drop. Just breakfast. After we ate, he pushed the small box toward me. I opened it slowly. Inside was a simple wristwatch. Not expensive, not flashy, just clean steel and leather. I looked at him. "I can't afford the kind of gift I used to dream about giving you," he said quietly. "But this one, I bought with honest money." I turned the watch over. Engraved on the back were words that hit harder than anything from that night a year ago. "Thank you for not giving up on me." For a moment I couldn't speak, because I finally understood. The worst thing he lost wasn't money. It was judgment, pride, direction, and the most valuable thing he gained wasn't forgiveness. It was responsibility. I fastened the watch onto my wrist. "Daniel," I said softly, "I never needed you to be successful." He looked up. "I needed you to be someone you could live with." He nodded. "I think I'm getting there." I smiled. "You are." We sat on the porch afterward, watching the afternoon sun settle across the yard. 1 year ago, I thought Father's Day had taken everything from me. Instead, it gave me my son back. And this time, there were no secrets at the table, only something far more valuable than $180,000. Trust. The end.